Welcome to a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, agorism's new dawn today. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unplanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Welcome to the Legacy Right live, back at it again for another good one. After another week out, week in, week out, we are back at it again. Let's bring in my co-host. How you doing, Andrew?
Consistency. That's all you need.
That's all it is, man. That's all it's about. It's about consistency. So this is Andrew Joseph, by the way. I am the legacy of Jennifer Kaiser. I'm Zachary Kaiser. And what are we about to get into today? We got a couple of guests.
Some shenanigans.
Let's get into some shenanigans. I like shenanigans. So going on, speaking of that, going on right now, back to back. So catch his replay. Don't watch him live. But Buzz in Reality is sadly going on hiatus, so catch his
rebranding.
Join us though. Join us live. Screw him. So, but let's introduce our guest there, Andrew. We have Rachel Sunshine back again.
Hey.
And we have Sal the Agorist Mayweather back for the fourth time, I think. So two returnees. So how you folks doing today, Sal and Rachel?
Excellent.
You're on mute, Sal.
Sorry about that. I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, as always, thank you for coming on, both of y'all. So, well, Andrew, I'm gonna let you take the reins there, bud. It's time for you to drop your balls and be a man. Be the captain.
I know how hard that is.
All right. Ethics, man. How does that work in an anarchist society? What do you guys think?
No, it certainly doesn't work in a statist society, I'll tell you that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have different schools of thought, philosophy, right? You got Christian, Judeo-Christian values, and then you have Greco-Roman values. How do you fix a society voluntarily in such an environment? I mean, how does that devolve and adapt?
Sal, you want to take
you guys
it?
Can me?
Yeah,
sure. So
I'll talk the whole time. So, like, you actually gotta be a little aggressive with me.
Oh, good, nice. don't have to do anything. It's wonderful. The only ethical principle one needs is the non-aggression principle, and just no one has the right to initiate force upon a non-violent person. It's very simple, very easy. It's really just the golden rule, which is, I think, I'm not like a religious scholar, but I think it's omnipresent in all major religions. I think everybody kind of believes that. It's just people pay lip service to it, but once it becomes convenient for them to infringe on somebody's personal autonomy, then the non-aggression principle goes out the window. And I think as agorists, our thing is that we apply that consistently where nobody else does. We are the only ones who really, like, we take that like to a sort of doctrinal extreme. So to me, that is the only ethical consideration, and it's only present in agorism.
I'm gonna throw a curveball in on this one though. What if I don't believe in the non-aggression principle? I'm an ego.
It's still immoral. It's still immoral. You can believe or not believe in it, but the fact is, whether something is moral or immoral should be judged at least on that one principle alone.
Okay, I'm going to add to that because I like agorism as well. There is something really interesting happening in current modern day politics. Today, Tulsi Gabbard was doing whatever she needed to do to get approved for whatever she's going to do. She actually said that there are people who are going to slander her and say that she is beholden to something other than God, herself, and the Constitution. I take that pretty seriously, actually. The fact that she said she's beholden to herself, that is the utmost. We have inspiration inside of us. We know what is right and wrong. So when we are not following the nap, there are consequences to that. And people need to be aware of that. Even if they don't believe in God, there is still themselves that they need to be beholden to. Even if they don't believe in government, it is still themselves that they need to be beholden to. And we need to remember that. So when people do not take personal responsibility, they abdicate that to some other arbitrary, illegitimate third party. And that third party becomes despotic, would probably be the right word to use for what's currently going on. And we just need to, drop our balls, become men, and do what we need
to look at it another way. The only rights that we actually have are property rights. Like, no one has rights, because we belong to some group. There's no such thing as men's rights or gay rights or women's rights or black rights or Jewish rights. There's just rights as human beings. We all have property rights, and your body is yours and my body is mine. So no one can infringe upon your body, no one can infringe upon mine. And as long as we maintain that, then I think all ethical considerations have been met.
I'm gonna push back on that again. But go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm going to add one more thing. I tend to be a little fundamentalist about my approach in this. I'm a strict consequentialist. So if you do whatever you need to do to me to aggress me, and I believe that you are aggressing me, I don't need some other third party's permission to defend myself. I'm a sovereign human being. I am free. I am the absolute sovereign. So I don't need permission from nobody. So you probably shouldn't come at me, because you have no idea what the consequences will be. Neither do I. They're kind of just, it's like, whatever you're doing, I'm going to prepare.
Whatever happens, happens. Actually, I'm going to push back on all that. I'm going to play the egoist role tonight. So, property rights, Sal. Well,
yeah.
What if how do we maintain property rights? So, I mean, who controls the property rights? Because the egoist in me says, I'm just going to beat the shit out of you and take what's mine. And if you win,
Right.
you get to maintain that property. But if I win, it's mine. It's all mine.
So
Winner or go home.
there's a great book called Chaos Theory by Bob Murphy. And there's another great book called Private Production of Defense by Hans Hoppe. And they both sort of Bob sort of explains everything like on the more intricate micro level, whereas Hans Hoppe sort of explains it on a sort of nationwide or global scale. But long story short, in Chaos Theory, what Bob says is that a lot of these things would be handled by insurance companies in a truly free society. We would contract out with insurance companies much more often than we do today for services that the state currently monopolizes, including policing services. So we could have a system of private property where I delegate my, responsibility to protect my property to another firm, to a security firm, and based on. It would actually work out very well if you think about it, because there would likely be different levels of subscriptions. So if you don't have a lot of money, maybe you would get the most basic package where the cops would ride by your house maybe once a night or something like that. I'm just making shit up here. I don't know. No one knows because we haven't allowed entrepreneurs to apply the creative mindset to the problem. But that's a hell of a lot better than what the poor people who live in the ghetto are currently getting from the police, where they're actually being shot and murdered by the police on a daily basis. At least they would get some level, some modicum of protection from these police services if they were privatized. So I think insurance companies would have a lot to do with it. There would be a lot of private security firms that would actually probably be contracted out by the insurance companies and not so much directly by the individual. But again, we don't really know how these things would play out because we haven't allowed entrepreneurs to tackle the problem.
Right. So
private property, does it exist? By law, it exists. By morality, it should exist. I totally believe that a person absolutely 100% unequivocally without a doubt in every way, shape, and form, so that there's no misunderstanding, owns their body and themselves. There cannot be any misunderstanding about that. Property is a funny thing. It was actually created by insurance companies, I don't know, 400, 500, 600 years ago. So it's the history of property itself, right? And the definition of property. The definition of property is from legality. It's from the law. It's from enforcement of the law. So you've got personal property like, hey man, don't touch my toothbrush. Why'd you put it in the toilet and then put it back in the cup? That was really shitty. You could have just told me you were mad at me. You've got private property. I own this house, but I live 1,500 miles away from it. How am I going to protect it? I'm going to be honest with you. You really can't. Not at this point in time. Then you've got public property. And I'm going to use that term as loosely as I can, but it's just basically the government just saying like, hey, that belongs to me now. And we really have no choice in the matter. But if you think about it, everything is still public property because the government collects taxes, can put a lien on your property and foreclose on it and put it up for sale if you don't pay your taxes. Mm-hmm. So people don't really own anything right now except for personal items. And I guess, if somebody's sticking it in the toilet, do you really own it anyway? So we have all of these nuances when it comes to property. I would really like to be a little bit more optimistic about humanity in regards of thinking that perhaps property isn't 100% necessary in the future. We could have the potential to have like a rapid evolution in our intelligence to not necessitate the need for survival on land and et cetera, et cetera. There could be huge leaps in the evolutionary process of humanity if humanity can come to terms with the fact that government and these weird criminals, many of them pedophiles and weirdos, are in charge of us, and we don't actually need to have them in charge of us. That we could develop some type of working together agreement with each other where we don't need to necessarily defend ourselves from one another 100% of the time. I don't know about you guys, but I'm exhausted doing that. It's like a constant battle right now. We're in like some sort of like level 11th dimension, I don't know, war. It's just like every single part of consciousness is at war with another part of itself. And I feel like we should move past that. I don't think that that's necessary. So I believe in voluntarism to the point of, I don't know, imagining utopia. And that would be really, really nice. So I'm reaching for the stars there. I'm super optimistic about humanity and what it could be like post-government.
That's a good point.
Go ahead,
I
Andrew.
just of historical context, what you're talking about, Rachel. Say, let's look back at what happened with the Mormons, right? They got pushed out into neutral territory where they could establish their own society and what their perspective on, and it's controversial for most Christians to think they're not really a religion, and they say, "Oh yeah, well we are." It's the fact that you have that neutral area where you can establish your identity and you can get the foothold. If you're trying to, make something legitimate, like Bitcoin, like in the Sal's picture behind him, it needs a place where people don't care. If you're going to establish anything, you have to produce a working model in order to show that it is a legitimate point of view. And that's something that like you said, we're fighting for it more and more every day. And it's more expensive to go against the grain than go with it, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Sal? Do you think that's something that we're going to be doing for a long time?
What do you mean, like specifically? Like, reframe the question for me.
What I'm saying is, do you think that this can be a revolving door, a repetitive cycle, or we get into these scraps about what is right and wrong and ethics, and well, you can't do that here, so you basically, like the thing with like marijuana, how it's being legalized now, how for the last 100 years they've been fighting for it.
Right.
This do you think down the road, eventually, as time evolves, society progresses, that we're going to have more open-minded things to neutrality and stuff like that, or do you think it's going to be a constant revolving door?
No, I think that the state is sort of, I look at the state like a fish floundering out of water, gasping for air, because that's what they are. And of course, the water that they need to breathe is fiat currency, and this is how we sort of deny them their air, and we sort of drown the fish. But I would say that, like, it's not necessarily about like as agorists, we're always going to do like, there's always going to be a black market. We're always going to be there. They just can't stop it. It'll never end. And we don't necessarily need like these little carve outs where they're going to allow us like this incubation period for something like Bitcoin or a new technology or something like that, because what we do is we operate in the shadows. We're the gray man. We operate behind the scenes. Whether they make it legal or illegal, I'm going to use Bitcoin. I'm going to use Monero. They're not going to stop me. I'm going to 3D print guns. It's just nothing that they're going to do is going to encourage me or discourage me to do otherwise. I might just increase my OPSEC. I might just use better encryption. I might use a better VPN. I might hide it better, but we'll never stop. I think that's clearly evidenced by history. Like, look at, it was the black market that took down, the Soviet Union, right? If you read the last few chapters of Antipolitics, there's a whole section on that. And it was the black market that kicked the British out of India, right? That's what Gandhi used black market salt to get rid of the British troops. He didn't pick up an Enfield rifle and start shooting. That would have been contrary to his cause. And I think that we'll see that pattern will continue. Like, we'll see the black market win and the state will have some victories, but in the end, we always win. In the end, the agorists will win.
That's interesting about the 3D printer, because someone just told me that they're thinking about regulating the 3D printers with licensing. probably because of the guns. Yeah, what do either this one's for you too, Andrew. So what do you all think if they were to go that route?
You can't regulate. You can't make hot steel and plastic illegal. So they can try, but it's just never going to work. I saw a guy who actually 3D printed a 3D printer. He actually made he 3D printed little squares, and a million little squares, and he turned it into a 3D printer. So how do you regulate something like that? You can't. Now, so at 3D printer go burr, we've faced a lot of increasing regulations over the years. California, it's now illegal for us to advertise in California it's illegal for us to advertise to Californians about, hey, you can make a gun with this. It's illegal to send and receive files in the state of New York, 3D gun files. But this is the flailing about of the fish that I was talking about. They're desperate. They're trying to put Band-Aid on a gaping open wound. It's just not gonna work. They can try all they want. Look at Dexter Taylor, right? And that's the thing. This is the beautiful part about agorism. This is what Tolstoy knew. This is what the lesson that Gandhi took from Tolstoy, that we agorists and Sam Conkin have taken from Gandhi. The more that they brutalize us, the more our message gets out there. And I know there's a lot of people on the right who have a problem with that, and I understand what they're saying, but at the end of the day, we win by exposing the brutality of the state. So when they do something when they put Dexter Taylor, the guy in New York who got 10 years in prison for making his own guns, guess what? That story is going viral right now. The whole country is talking about it. And look at Ross Ulbricht. Ross Ulbricht was literally a self-described agorist who was using the same pattern that was in Alongside Night. And by giving him a double life plus 40 sentence, the state drew so much attention to its own crimes that they were forced to release him. They had no choice. Again, Gandhi, of course, used the same, he would march Indians right through the British soldiers because he knew they were going to get the shit kicked out of them. But guess what? When they did, those pictures made the headlines, and that's what woke people up. And it's that sort of it's those sort of victories that sort of help us in the long run. So every time, what I'm trying to say here is that every time that they push back against us, they're actually helping us, and they're sort of stuck in that cycle where they're never actually going to win. Same thing with marijuana. They had to legalize marijuana because first of all, the black market was so big and there were so many people involved in it that they were like, my neighbors are going to jail for 10 years, or they're having their lives ruined for smoking a joint. This is ridiculous. That's what ended the cannabis laws. It wasn't the benevolence of some parasite in Washington that did it.
I'm just going to say, print guns, not money.
Yes.
That's exactly how I feel about that conversation.
Yes.
They're probably going to license it. They're going to get away with some sort of type of regulation, but gray men don't care.
Right.
Their whole job is to push the limits, to do things that the government does not approve of, because who is the government to approve of it? It's so absurd and ridiculous. It's not even funny. So I remember the last time I was on the show, I believe the phrase was black and gray all the way. So you have to do it. You have to push in this manner. It's just the way that things go with the government. So, and I think that the government doesn't need to be around. That'd be really great because they're completely illegal and a criminal element. So that's really what we need to be fighting for, not necessarily just pushing back, but just their elimination. They need to go. They're illegal. They literally have worked themselves outside of the Constitution to the point of treason. It's just, we're done. I don't understand why we're still all sitting here playing the game of government. It's just so silly to me, so I got to sit here and crochet in order to calm myself down. Otherwise it's going to be printing a lot of guns.
Well, to respond to Zach's question, I think, you have two options. You can either sit back and try to wait for the market to make enough pressure that they're going to capitulate, or you can go to new territory where they don't care about your behavior, and you're going to be able to act according to your own ethical point of view.
Well, I'm a little like in your face about it. My political activism is very real. And then I go to government meetings and I actually tell them that they're criminals right to their face during my 3-minute speeches. So, like, my whole idea of another territory, I just don't see why I need to do that. They're in my territory. I employ them. They're the criminals. I'm not a criminal. I'm doing everything that I'm just saying, nonviolent resistance is what we're talking about here. We're talking about Gandhi. We're talking about ways where we make the system very uncomfortable. And I feel like just getting together and voiding out voiding them out. It's nonviolent. We don't have to do any violence, and we could just get together. The First Amendment. I just recently wrote an article about this actually because I did a little ditty on the definition of pardon over the history of America. And you guys, I got to be honest with you, a preemptive pardon doesn't exist. It's actually a complete redefining by Joe Biden and the media. It literally doesn't exist anywhere at all. It's a nuance from a Supreme Court ruling, and then they created a word and actions that associate with what a Supreme Court ruling, like literally back in like 1858 ruled, and it needs to be readdressed. But the issue is that the Supreme Court granted themselves the power of judicial review. So they decided that they're going to be able to redefine words in the Constitution. Now, as people who love voluntary contracts, you can't, as a third party, just walk on in and tell the two signatories you're going to change the definitions that they mutually agreed upon in their contract. You literally can't do that. That makes the contract illusory. There's no meeting of the minds. There's no mutual agreement on what the words mean anymore. So the Supreme Court has granted themselves this power. They did it in a Supreme Court case. They did it in Marbury v. Madison in 1803. And so they've been implementing all of these new definitions of legal words for over 200 years. And it's insane. It's literally insane. From like health being an absolute Fourth Amendment right to, we can regulate it under like general welfare and police powers. This all happened through Supreme Court rulings. So the pardon power, the preemptive pardon power, that didn't exist, okay? And I wrote a new article about it, and somebody asked me, what the hell can we do about this? And, I'm like thinking inside the box. We can make an amendment to the Constitution that restricts the definition of pardon. We could take away the pardon power and, blah, 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 blahs. Congress could actually pass an amendment that voids out judicial review. There's like a whole slew of things that people could do about this. But then I would get to thinking radically, right? Pushing them. The First Amendment actually grants us the power to meet with each other freely in a peaceful situation. We are allowed to associate with each other under any circumstance whatsoever. And that includes, I would believe, discussing voiding out the Constitution. We can actually go into contracts freely with one another. Thank you, First Amendment and Fourth Amendment. So we don't need their permission as a third party that we created with our absolute sovereignty to actually meet together and decide, you know what? I don't like that old contract. You know what? Me neither, Sal. Why don't we void it? God, that sounds amazing, Rachel. Done. Like, we literally don't need them. There is a nuance that I love talking to AI about this stuff, because AI is it's the teacher approved version of history that only state teachers are allowed to teach you. The indoctrination is fantastic. And so I love arguing with it about it. And AI says that actually the Constitution was ratified while the Articles of Confederation was still being enforced because they worked around the state legislatures and held special conventions without them. How funny is that? If you delve in a little bit deeper, it turns out that each constitution or article for each state had ways that the legislature could call for a special convention. So today, there's so many states that actually some of them got away with nothing. They got away with not giving the people in any way, shape, or form the ability to call for a special convention outside of the state legislature. I argue we actually don't need that legality. We have the First Amendment on our side, and we are the sovereign that granted them permission to even exist. So we don't need them. And I feel like people just need to kind of come together and come to grips with this. And that's what we need to do. Like, screw the Supreme Court, screw Congress, screw the state Congress, screw the mayors and the governors, screw them all. We don't need you because they're all the elite group working together under a form of absolute power that is outside of law. It's outside of a constitution. And amazingly, it is outside of their opponents because, oh my God, the opponents are working with them. It's amazing. So they're all working together in this super elitist group to enact laws that are enforced on us, but they're somehow outside of. And I think that that's ridiculous. I know for a fact nobody would agree to that. And because there is a legal history in America that actually documents, it's amazing. They document themselves working outside of the Constitution. They say that it has to continue happening because, by golly, Rachel, it is tradition. Like, they actually say that to me. It's tradition.
White Army versus Red Army.
Yeah, no, it's so ridiculous to hear. And I've actually had lawyers like lunge across the table at me when I discuss this. 22 years of constitutional legal scholar articles and podcasts, and the list goes on. And yeah, no, I get into fights very often discussing this, but the Constitution is void, you guys. It's not enforceable. It's completely illusory. The definition has changed to the point there's no meeting of the minds between people. There is no de facto amendment process that gives the Supreme Court the authority to change the Constitution to stay hip and cool with the times. It's not a thing. We're done. And then we can go practice wonderful voluntarist agorism where everybody has voluntary interactions. And I'm not spending thousands of dollars every year for like my county commissioner to give her boss $5 million to purchase a property that she definitely shouldn't be purchasing. But like, come on, you guys, she is my friend, and so forth. All of this nonsense that I have to hear all the time when it comes to government. It's just sheer nonsense. Nonsense. Sorry, I ranted.
You're good.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
It reminds me, I saw a couple months ago, Michael Malice had a guest on his program, and he's talking about how they're going, this is before the Trump election, how they're going after DEI, and they were petitioning CEOs of companies and pressuring them to drop DEI one at a time. Why can't we do that, on a state level and a city level, and eventually, the states will step in and do that on a federal level? That's what I want. I know it's. Go ahead.
You mean we need to bring back common sense?
Yes.
Do we need to have a township liberation?
Common sense on my show, definitely. No.
I'm just saying it's something that could work in practice because it has worked in practice.
Yeah, well, people are afraid. Just so you know, You know, there's a lot of corruption in my town, for example, and people are just afraid. So they think that I am a sheer lunatic for going up against the cops and, you know, politicians here in town, writing about how Joe Biden is a despot and then asking all of the people who hate me in town to actually look at the article like it's I keep pushing buttons. I can't help myself, you know, because they keep taking my money. What the hell, you know, and my property and my rights and like my ability to live peacefully and believe that my children wouldn't be harmed. And I don't know, like the list goes on and on. So, you know, it's for that next generation basically that I have no fucks to give at this point. And I don't think that anybody else should either. I really don't, you know, that's just my personal opinion though.
So, you want have anything to add?
You know, I more or less agree with everything that y'all are saying. I don't know. Sometimes I think that I don't put that much faith in like local government solutions or things like that, because I feel like that is sometimes they're actually more crooked than your federal politicians, because they can get away with more because there's not a big spotlight on them like there is on congressmen and senators. So sometimes your biggest crooks are in your municipal and city governments and town halls and city halls and shit like that. So my general like view on all of this is just, I don't care what they say. It's just noise in the background. I'm living my life. I got shit to do. I got money to make, and I'm doing everything I can to do that in a way that is disruptive to them. I don't want them to know who I am. I don't want them to know my name. I don't want them to know where I live. I don't want them to know anything about me. I used to like battle with the local town and stuff like that, and it eventually reached a climax where I ended up putting my fist through the mayor's wall at my local town hall, and the cops had to drag me out, and I cursed all them off and drove off, and they chased me down, and that was a whole fucking to-do. But I learned my lesson. After that, I'm like, you know what? I don't even want them to know who the fuck I am. I just want them to know my name, because then they just start looking into you like, what do you have in your trunk? Oh, what's this plastic gun? And what's this? And where did you get this money from? It's none of your fucking business. You know what I mean? So nowadays I just try to be the gray man. I blend into the shadows. I want everybody, you know, I don't even talk shit with the IRS anymore. If you see, I barely even post about them anymore, because I don't want the fucking heat. I don't want the magnifying glass. I'm out here working. I'm on, like, this is agorist street level shit at this point. I'm out here like trying to like do what I can to like, I'm shipping 3D printers into gun-free zones. I don't need the ATF coming down on me. You know what I mean? So I think a huge part of agorism that a lot of people don't pay enough attention to is operational security and, safeguarding one's own interests using tools like encryption and encrypted cryptocurrencies and VPNs and things like that. And, you know, I've never, from like an entrepreneurial perspective, I've never lost money betting against the politician. I've only ever made money betting against the politicians. And it's been the best decision I've ever made, because it's helped me escape the whole 9-to-5 wage slavery, and the gun laws don't apply to me anymore. I don't pay the ridiculous inflationary taxes that fund the genocides and the wars and the welfareism. I don't pay for that bullshit anymore. So, I mean, that's the beauty of agorism. And it's that, you know, you as agorists, we recognize that freedom is within us. It's not external. It's not something that a politician can give you, because it was never theirs in the first place. You have to claim it. It resides within us, and it's just there for you to accept or to reject. And I think once you accept that and you start taking responsibility for your own life, instead of relying on them or even getting angry with them, because of course they're parasites. You know, that's what they do. This is what a parasite does. They're behaving as you would expect a parasite to behave. So I just feel like I just ignore them, do not comply, and engage in entrepreneurial agorism, make some money in the process, live your life. You know, Thoreau, in his famous essay on civil disobedience, said something to the effect of like, this is an exact quote, but I'm paraphrasing here. He said something like, we're only here for what, 60, 70, 80 years with a whole lot of luck. Like, I don't have enough time to convince you to let me be free. I'm not here to convince other people that they should be free. If you can't see that by now, I don't know what to say. I can't help you. I'm only here. I only have enough time here to live my life as I see fit. And if you get in the way, well, fuck you. That's sort of the way I look at it as well.
Yeah, if you don't take
Gotta
back
say
what's yours. Oh,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
gotta say that I wish I had that luxury. Unfortunately, became pretty popular in town when I wrote my book, How Medical Tyranny Murdered the United States Constitution, a historical analysis on how the Supreme Court worked around the Constitution to enact medical tyranny. After that happened, I had a lot of people ask me for their help. So unfortunately, I've been dealing with that. And it's crazy how corrupt these locals actually are, these local politicians. Like, I had a lady come up to me. She's like, "Hey, the county's trying to take my road, and they've been harassing me and threatening to like arrest me for putting speed bumps on my road." Well, it turns out that like the county commissioner's second cousin, twice removed, lives on the road, and they didn't want the speed bumps, and so they used county funds to remove the speed bumps on this lady's private road. And so to cover their asses, they actually held an emergency work session, and they said, yeah, we're actually maintaining like maybe 100 miles of private road with county funds, and we're going to continue doing that because that's for our constituents. Now, constituent means person that votes for me. So they basically said, we're using private funds to pay to maintain people's private roads, where we're using public funds to maintain people's private roads, and we don't have the funds to maintain the actual roads because we are using those funds for private roads. So I looked into this, you guys, and there is actually from like 1984 or something like that, where like 286 county commissioners get taken down by the FBI in Oklahoma because they were all skimming the road fund of like millions of dollars. So like, yeah, when you're talking about local officials being corrupt, I have to say, man, it's like, it's mind blowing. It's down to the itty bitty teeny tiny town councilman all the way up to the president, because they're working clearly for some other shadow entity. So that's where we have to be shadows ourselves. And there's
George
always
Soros? Are they all working for George Soros?
Yeah, no.
I know there's a lot of prosecuting attorneys.
You know what I'm saying?
Kind of
No. The guy at the top, he's definitely not named. I'll put it that way. So nobody would know who he is. Otherwise, there'd be some competition. It's kind of like, Caesar getting stabbed in the neck by his general and so on and so forth. And welcome to the fall of Rome. So that's what would happen. But it's scary if you just sit back and do only for yourself. And even when I had businesses that were black and gray, for many years, I owned Anarchy, Revolutionary Confections, and Mountain Maiden Trading Company. And both of those were agorist, quite a bit actually. So I really enjoyed that. But as time went on, I realized I wasn't really making the impact that I wanted to. And maybe I'm a bit of a troll in this regard, but I actually like just like gently reminding government that they're acting illegally every once in a while. I don't know. It's like a fetish of mine, maybe.
I mean, initially, that's what it was all about. And
Totally.
The revolution of 1776 is just a bunch of guys just getting together and
they got really drunk, and they were like, dude, this is some fucking bullshit. And then they,
exactly.
And they're like, yeah, this is some bullshit. And then the next thing you know, one of them could write, and then like he just slipped a paper over to somebody else. Who's like, do you think this is bullshit? And I'm totally for that.
Well, that's like, why. That's why they during.
Go ahead.
during the scamdemic, that's why they banned gathering in public, because they didn't want everybody to get together and start talking shit about them. And this is why I tell other agorists, like, everyone's like, oh, the NFT thing is over. I'm like, it's not over, because if you look at the metaverse, that provides us, if one day that'll come back, they're going to stop the public assembly thing again, even though it's a direct violation of the Constitution. As Rachel said, they don't give a fuck about the Constitution anymore. My second book, The American Experiment, was all about how that got turned upside down. But like, the metaverse allows us a space that they can't stop us from congregating in. And I don't know if you've used things like Decentraland or Sandbox or any of those sort of virtual metaverses that are all based on NFTs, by the way. That's unstoppable, and they can't stop us. And there's a lot of other applications we can get into later about like agorist applications for that technology. But yeah, they're gonna like that. That was the key to banning public assemblies during COVID. They didn't want us to discuss how unhappy we all didn't want us to realize that we were all unhappy together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm like ancient. Maybe you should know this about me, Sal. I live the out in the woods. So I live in a town 30 miles outside of it. The town is 2,500 people. The county is about 45 miles in diameter. There's about 14,000 of us. I live like on the side of the mountain 3 times and down the side of the mountain once in order to get to my house. People are afraid to come to my house. It's definitely a thing, even in summer. And so I'm not technologically inclined. I just have a tendency to actually do it like it's 1786 and like get the shit done. So like I totally appreciate people who are on the other side of it is what I'm saying. Like I'm all about all the fronts that can be utilized. So it's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like literally handwritten notes in a bar.
One thing I've learned is, crypto anarchy really is like a very, very powerful tool. And if you think of all the different applications it has to be used against the state, it's actually really impressive. Like, look at the 3D printed gun, right? We take an object that they've banned in some political territory and we transform it into code. And then we move the code across the state border and we transform it back from code into a physical object. Or we look at, the cryptography behind Monero with ring signatures and all these different cryptographic protocols that enable privacy, or even the old school, the Model T version over here, right? Even that cryptography was impressive. Or we look at the cryptography behind NFTs, or the list goes on. So it's just a very useful tool for us. Back in the day, when I was a little hoodlum running around the North Jersey housing projects, many, many moons ago, you guys were probably still in diapers. If you wanted to buy drugs from the guy in the corner, you would send him a little, like they had pagers and beepers on them. So you would send a code. And that code would tell them, it was like a cipher. Code would tell them what you want, how much you wanted, and they would respond back with another code telling you what the price was and where to meet and when. But this was all done in code, in cipher. So we've really just essentially taken the same technology but upgraded it. And agorists have been using these tools for time immemorial, but we're actually we've getting to the point where we're perfecting them, and we see that with projects like Xano and stuff like that.
That's interesting. You talk about the code, because you go from, it's amazing how the evolution. You go from pagers to your cell phone before the smartphone, and you're talking in code, or you start texting, and then next thing you know, now we're on the like crypto and the blockchain, and I'm still wondering why people are using Cash App to sell their drugs when there's blockchain. But it is
I'm
what
like
it is.
literally like, here, have some backyard honey.
Right.
Yeah, but see, that's solid agorism too, though. That's solid agorism too, though.
Yes, so like instead of doing like digital technology, I'm literally like have spent years perfecting skills that would be necessary if there were to be some sort of fall in society. So I am depending on those crypto guys to want some eggs, some honey, some chickens. I'm planning
Well,
on
like
some sort of trade here.
the pattern that we use was identified by Per Byland in an article he wrote in 2006, and essentially he said that there's sort of two subsets of agorism, and like so the first would be we create these local production facilities that bypass state regulations. So something like a 3D printer is a local production facility that bypasses state regulations. A blockchain miner is a local production facility of currency that bypasses state regulations. But guess what? So is a garden, right? So is a beehive, right? That you're like, we're making honey, like stuff like that. So is a black market shade tree mechanic, like the guy on the corner who you take your car to his house, and he does it under the table without paying taxes, right? So we have that, and then we have the other aspect of agorism, which is just voluntary peer-to-peer trade. And what Per Byland says is that if you combine both of them, it gets super, super powerful. Right now, you have a local production facility that bypasses state regulations, and it's being traded in a way that just does not pay any attention to state regulations. So the 3D printer and the 3D printed gun is great, but you know what's even better? When you start selling them to people on the street, right? The garden is great, right? And the food that's not regulated by the lunatics at the FDA, that's wonderful. But you know what's even better? When you start selling it to the people on the street and your neighbors for silver coins and unregulated currencies. So you can, that's sort of the method or the pattern, the logical schema that agorists like to use. So I wouldn't knock gardening or homesteading or anything like that. That is just as valuable as what Satoshi Nakamoto is doing, so, or has done.
Speaking of value, what do you guys think? We have Rachel. I knew you from Facebook, right? That was a social network. That's a centralized operation. If we have alternatives for that now on crypto, like Den.social, right? And with alternatives, you can implement different instances for different particular perspectives of what is ethical and unethical. So it's just something to consider.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually. I'm so far removed from that, but I fully encourage it. Like 100%, 110, my whole being, my everything, every life I've lived, do it.
That's right.
Oh, I thought you had something.
I can hear the chickens now.
Right?
I did.
It's probably a German Shepherd, actually. He misses me.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, he's 110-pound big baby, let me tell you.
110 pounds. How old is he?
He'll be 6 this year in June. So he's
There's your operational security.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, actually his lady companion is actually much worse. He's a big fat baby. He barks a lot. He's scared of everything. She actually bites. So you have to be careful about that. So do I. I also do. I'm also very scary for people. So they don't like, ghost guns and stuff like that either. So it's kind of a thing.
It is always the girls that bite harder. I will say.
Yes, absolutely. No, I mean, that's because we have like that mama bear instinct, you know what I'm saying? So you kind of got to do it for the kids is kind of how, and I don't know if you guys know this, but when male bears come out of hibernation, they'll actually stalk female bears with cubs and they'll try and eat the cubs. So that's where the mama bear instinct comes into play. It's actually to protect from other fellow bears, if you can imagine. So it gets a little crazy like that, but that's how it is, and I live on a dead end road, like I said, on the top of a mountain, so like even the cops are afraid to come out here. You know, so like they literally try not to come out here, and I yell at the cops out here, and there's a lot of people in town who are afraid of me because I'm not uh what controllable, I guess would be the word is. So they think I'm dangerous, you know, because I'm unwilling to follow their very arbitrary
Regular.
and weird rules about society, which I think is crumbling around us on a constant
Mhm.
basis. So I think that mostly we look like we're going to break down into civil war, go 3D printed guns, and guerrilla warfare. So, you know, we're dealing with that on one hand, and watching, I don't know, the green screen on the other hand. It just gets to be a little, it's crazy right now watching everything happen. So it's all about preparing with the bulk. And I know people say bulk Bitcoin, you got to buy the crypto. I don't know. I used to do it a long time ago, and I just stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking a long time ago. I'm 39, so I may look like I'm 12, but I swear to God I'm not. And so you know, crypto, like, I don't know, it like came in and like went out for me in my backwoods hillbilly lifestyle.
What's speaking of the inevitable collapse? What do you think the pattern is? Because it seems like we're just in another trajectory of another pattern of social decadence that leads to inevitable collapse of an empire. So where do you think we're at there? Or have
Oh,
we
yeah.
even got to the worst of it yet?
No, 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 no. So I believe that we went through an actual silent military coup in January of 2020. There are 8 stages of a silent military coup, some of which is like, you know, the government working together with the media to, you know, amplify their voice and things like that. There are also 8 stages of the decay of a republic. And so
Mm.
I believe that we are in the 8th stage of that, that is raiding the coffers in order to enrich themselves. It causes a banana republic, essentially. We're there. We're totally there. Like I said, a
Mhm.
preemptive pardon doesn't exist. I really, it doesn't exist. So Nixon got a preemptive pardon, and Ford pardoned some people in Reagan's administration. And that's basically where they came up with the history of the preemptive pardon. The only issue is that both of those were done as an excuse to heal the nation. Okay, so there's like
Mhm.
4 different reasons why presidential pardons happen. And one of them, I cannot believe that they write this officially. One of the official reasons is to heal the nation. Okay, so after Nixon was pardoned, the government would have had to have brought criminal charges. And so those criminal charges never happened to heal the nation. And so it's actually never been challenged, but no president should be allowed to pardon criminal elements within his own questionable administration. So his administration is questioned for its legality of even being president, right? That he won the election. His whole administration is in question for its legitimacy. And then he pardons moments before a new president is put into office uh, criminal elements within his own administration, within his
Mhm.
own questionable criminal administration. This is not something that was defined when the Constitution was ratified, regardless of the Constitution being legal, right? So basically, what we did is we gave this dude absolute power outside of the law. He has no recourse for anything. Donald Trump came out 4 years later and said the dude should have pardoned himself. That's what he said. Self pardoning is literally the exact definition of despotism. So don't be surprised when Donald Trump pardons himself on the way out the door. And the reason why is because they're all working together, you guys. The Supreme Court is like the arbiter who's like, oh my God, I love giving you guys all of these additional powers. It's like the most fun thing I could possibly think about doing with my life. Like, that's how the Supreme Court is. I'm not even kidding. They sit there and go, how can I expand these powers? And that's what they do. And so the Supreme Court and the presidents all are like, hey, what if we just incrementally say that a preemptive pardon exists, and then, like, you know, nobody fights it, and then we can just say that it exists, you guys. We don't have to actually go to court because, like, you know, we're the ones who are supposed to be enforcing the law anyway. So it's all just like this circular redefining, all the elites working together. So none of this should be happening. I think a lot of Americans have actually figured this out. I would say 33% or so of Americans are like, what the hell? This is completely ridiculous. I mean, I can get down to like very specific statistics here. I would say about 30% or so are like, whoa, something's not right, but I believe that my guy's going to fix it. And that's people who voted for Donald Trump. And then there's like 34-ish percent or so where people are like, I want half of this country to die. Like, they legitimately want people who do not think exactly like them to die. And they want government to do it. And I don't think that they really care if it's a Democrat or a Republican. They just really want it to happen. A lot of them are Democrats, though. And they were on a trajectory. They were on that trajectory for 4 years with Joe Biden, the things that we hear coming out of there. And it's just kind of like a shock and awe campaign, right? But there is a book called The Council of 300. It's somewhere on my bookshelf. Sorry, I'm sitting on my bookshelf. And it's basically those secret elites. They actually want to void out the Constitution. So they want the same thing I want, but they just want it for different reasons. I want it so that people could be the most free that they have ever seen in the history of humanity. I want personal sovereignty. I want people to sit there and go, okay, we just had a revolutionary war against England, right? And instead of delegating their sovereignty to somebody else, they should have just been like, you know what, I'm going to keep that shit. That actually belongs to me. And I don't think I'm going to delegate to that third party that you want me to, right? That would be amazing if we did that. That's all I'm saying. It would be amazing. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that the government's actually going to kill off a whole lot of people. I'm not even sure that I'll survive. You know, who knows who the hell is going to survive? I think it's going to be a very small percentage of people. I also think it's going to be a lot of people who are going to be easily trained. So it's not going to be people who are doing some type of resistance. And yes, of course, humanity has that ability to survive. They really want to survive, and we cling to it, right? So I'm sure there will be some of us who survive and maintain, but they have a plan. They have a plan. They have a plan like 20 years from now. We don't necessarily have a plan. We are very deconstructed in our resistance. It's very sad and disappointing sometimes to think about. Could be the reason for my major depression. I have no idea. But it's really important that you maintain your principles because selling out's not going to get you anywhere. They're still going to kill you off. It's kind of their thing. So they have a plan for most of us, and it is eradication.
Well, and you think about it, we are under a system where we constantly have counterparties that are fighting for control of power, right? And it's a revolving door. It's the United States, it's Russia, it's China. It's not the state for all countries.
It's the Libertarian Party. Right.
There are countries that have consistent application of whatever rules they have, and they don't go through the kind of crises we go through all the time in other countries, like I said, Russia and China, for example. What can we do? Is it even worth it to try to rectify the situation, or what do we leave? What do you guys think?
Sorry, I don't speak Italian.
Purposefully.
What?
I purposefully don't speak Italian. So anyway, bada bing.
Right.
I don't care. No, in all actuality, I think that it's actually super important that we figure something out as people, just like on a personal level, not a government level, on a personal level. We have to do that. As some people work on it from different angles. I work on it from my angle of living in 1842. And we've got to figure that out for ourselves. That's the important part, figuring out what our community is. But let's sigh. Do people, that's the question I ask myself probably every day, maybe multiple times a day. Do people want to fix it? Because I'm under the impression that they don't.
Yeah. They're looking for the entertainment value, right?
Yeah, it's about entertainment. Fun. It ends in fire and like floods and stuff like that. But you can't help themselves. It just is what it is.
What's your perspective, Sal?
So I feel like we can sort of incentivize people to participate in the counter economy through economic incentives. So in other words, look at a lot of the growth in the cryptocurrency community has come from the idea that they think they're going to get rich by investing in crypto. And that's driven a lot of people into sound money. That's wonderful. Even right now where we see states where weed is legal, but there's like a huge tax on it. They're still going to the black market guys on the street corner because it's cheaper. Right. So as long as we can consistently provide a better product at a cheaper cost, we can incentivize them to participate in the counter economy. I think a lot of in terms of the collapse and stuff like that, all of that really goes back to his Austrian business cycle theory and a proper understanding of, what Menger and Mises and Rothbard said about this, which is, they print money and they create this boom, and eventually all of that malinvestment has to be liquidated. And once it does, it causes what we call a recession. And when a recession hits, the state has the option of they can either let the recession clear out that malinvestment, we can have a healthy economy again, or they can kick the can down the road and print more money. It's kind of like a junkie who goes through withdrawals, and instead of going through the painful process of withdrawal, they take another shot in the arm of dope so they temporarily feel good again. But those withdrawals are going to come back again. They're going to remain addicted. They're not addressing the root cause of the problem. And that's what the government does every time they print more money. So I think that eventually, you can't do that forever, right? Mises wrote about this. It's like a game of musical chairs. Eventually, the music is going to stop, and no one knows when, right? If we did, we would all be rich. But the idea is, from my perspective, you put your money into non-inflationary assets, and that's just by the laws of economics. You're going to make money, and that's what I've been doing. That's what's worked for me for a while. So, biggest thing I can tell people is just learn economics. It really has. If you can't understand political economy without understanding Austrian business cycle theory. That's really the key driving force behind all of the social sciences. So if you can understand that, you can understand a lot of the dynamics at play here, and you'll have a better understanding of the collapse and how to navigate it and stuff like that. So.
Well, it's funny because they say they implement the laws, but then they go and appeal to the Chicago Schools law of fractional reserve, but they don't even implement it to the way it was designed to be implemented. So,
right. Well, Hayek only really the only reason why he even won the Nobel in '74 was because he was willing to play ball with the banking cartel and say, "All right, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry. We can just." Reform the central bank instead of getting rid of it. So I don't know. I just feel like it's if you play the game with them, then you'll actually they'll keep you around. They'll give you your rewards. You can get tenure, and you could get the medal on your chest and stuff like that. And I thank God that Mises was not able to play that game, and he had too much integrity to go down that road, and that's how we got the true version of economics.
Was Hayek actually? Here's a good question that'll topsy turvy everybody. Was Hayek a socialist?
According to Mises, Mises had this famous saying where he was at like the table with like, Milton Friedman and Hayek and all these like huge free market anarchists, and they were talking about something like monetary theory, I think. And Mises stood up all angry and said, "You're all a bunch of socialists," and walked away. Because guess what? Compared to Mises, they might have been free market, believers, but when it came down to the very intricate principles, like only Mises was really consistent about it. So, again, that's why I've always considered myself a Misesian. I see the picture up in the top right corner of the screen right there. And, that line of thought was the one that really turned me. It was Rothbard that really convinced me to apply consistency. Right? I was like some dweeb in the Libertarian Party, like knocking on doors and working phone banks and wasting my fucking time. And I read Rothbard, and I'm like, oh, this is nonsense. What am I doing here? This is crazy. And then Rothbard led me to Sam Konkin, and the rest is history.
I read too much case law. Is what happened. And so, like, I was like, none of this is all bullshit. Like, it made me angry for several years. Like, how you see me now is legitimately calm compared to, like, when I first I was sitting in constitutional law class, like, excuse me, did they just give themselves a power? Right? And my professor was like, shit, yeah, they did. And I'm like, do I have to follow that? And yeah, you do. It's called stare decisis, jurisprudence, tradition. And I was like, oh, no, that's not going to work for me, bro. And so from that point forward, boy, did that really open my eyes. And I was not a libertarian. I was always just kind of unaffiliated. Am an open and celebratory anarchist, locally, nationally, internationally. I used to run a page called Maiden Anarchy, right? So, yeah, I was kind of in your face about it, but basically, I was like 7 years old telling my mom what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm like, Mom, I want to be Amish. She's like, no, it doesn't work like that, Rachel. It does, first off. Second, she was like, go find something else. So I was like, okay, I want to be a Supreme Court justice. I want to give people as much freedom as I possibly can. Turns out that is not what a Supreme Court justice does. So I'm basically like the antithesis of a Supreme Court justice. People call me Judge Rachel online because of my legal analyses, where I basically just like obliterate the government perspective in life and make them feel tiny and insecure about themselves. And it's fun. Like I said, it's a kink. But yeah, no, that's actually what got me going. Seeing, I had friends, I was a political science major in college. So I had friends who were into the whole picketing and campaign management and the whole 9 yards. And, oh, hey, Rachel, I got some free tickets to go see Obama speak. You want some of these? Sure, why not? I'll go waste my Thursday evening like that. I go try and watch him speak. It's actually the day of the Virginia Tech massacre. So like 26 people were, the official story, 26 people were murdered on the Virginia Tech campus. And so Barack Obama comes out and he actually says he laments the fact that he cannot have a party. Oh man, I was coming out here to give a really good speech and to party and to celebrate with you all, and I can't do that because of a bunch of people dying. And that's how he started his speech. And it ended up going for only 6 minutes, in which he describes the parting of the Red Sea and compares it to the Virginia Tech massacre, and ends his speech by saying something along the lines of, boy, am I just glad that my daughter wasn't there.
Yeah. And
that was it. And I just sat there like my jaw was on the floor. I was like, did I just watch a presidential candidate like speak like this? Did this just seriously happen? right? From there, it was just an implosion. And I was like, yeah, I thought government wasn't legit, but like, what the hell? So finding out that the Supreme Court wasn't legitimate, finding out all of our case law isn't legitimate, finding out that our presidents aren't legitimate, finding out that like our cell phone carriers aren't legitimate, finding out that nothing is legitimate. What the hell, you guys? We're living in this fake ass world. Nothing's legitimate.
Mhm.
And we're paying for it for some reason. And so, yeah, no, it was just mind boggling to me. From there, I kind of had some people try and interfere with my own personal economics and persuade me to involuntarily agree to work a job. At which point I was like, no, this isn't cool. Some type of human trafficking, where somebody tried to kidnap me and actually force me to do that. And so from there, it was just black and gray all the way. Cops were involved with that in Denver. 3rd and Broadway actually is where they tried to traffic me. It's very scary. And I still have, PTSD from that to this day. That's why I live the fuck out in the woods. But this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with illegitimacy everywhere. And so, yeah, when free capitalist, free market thinkers come out and they start talking about any type of regulation, yeah, they kind of appear socialist to me too. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of feel like there should be absolutely zero third-party regulation between relationships, whether that's on the market or, who I care about as a human being, anything in between that. And I kind of get a little irritated when people try and do that. I also get really irritated when people do that based off of it, like a false paradigm where they lie in order to maintain that power structure. That I just lose my mind over that. And it doesn't matter. Like if you claim to be an anarchist too, if you're an anarchist doing that shit, you're just as bad as the government. You don't believe in personal sovereignty. You believe in some type of control. And I can't do it. So you might be a socialist to me too, if you even so much have a semblance of that. Although I've been called a communist because I don't believe that communists should be able to control me. So then they go around, they call me a communist. It's like a back and forth thing. It's kind of been going on for like 15 years in the anarchist community. It's kind of fun. I'm old, I swear.
Well, that's sort of the it thing, especially in the online crowd these days. But I mean, even in real life, I mean, you're a communist or you're a Nazi. I mean, why do you think that is?
I cannot tell you how often it is that I get called a Nazi. So, like, my great uncle is Alexander. We talked about this. My great uncle is Alexander Berkman, the father of communist anarchy, right? So he wrote the ABCs of communist anarchy. He was Emma Goldman's boy toy. Okay. And so, like, literally, that's where like my family history goes. Is like anarchy. We really don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is illegitimate. And I don't know, man. People love calling me a Nazi, even though my family name is Berkman, heavily Jewish. Like heavily Lithuanian, Jewish, Gypsy, all the way Russian, Jewish, Gypsy. You know what I'm saying? My great grandfather actually stole the royal German crown jewels back from Russia. That's how Russian we look. After World War II, during the Cold War, he stole them back for Germany. And his name was Norman Berkman. He's in the Library of Congress for that. And it's just crazy. People call me a Nazi. I had to literally, all of these people calling people Nazis. I hate to say this, but they're acting like the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
They're like equating deportation, which I have my own personal feelings about that. I don't really, it's questionable because government's questionable. But anyway, they're equating deportation to literally like years of harming people and trying to eradicate a whole human race. Whether they did or not, that's a whole another subject for history, right? Everybody has their feelings on this. But what it comes down to, they're actually saying that dehumanization is the same as deportation. I'm not really sure that that's necessarily the case. And I can't imagine in 4 years them, for example, imprisoning somebody like me who's so anti-government and very, very active about being anti-government, perhaps even talking about assassination attempts and things for people over the years. I've really tried to calm down, guys, I promise. And so, you know, we discussed these things, and they definitely want me in a camp. I have had leftists tell me they want me in a camp or dead. They've been like, I will kill you if it's for the greater good, Rachel, since like 2012. Okay, so I have been dealing with them telling me that I deserve to be in a camp. I deserve to be eradicated. I deserve not to have medical treatment. I deserve to be mistreated, you know, for like my health. Like the whole list goes on. And I can only imagine in 4 years, if they were to gain power again, which it looks like the Democrat Party is up in flames. Literally nobody will take on a leadership position for the Democrat Party because it is plutonium right now. So nobody's stepping up to do that. I think it's great. Kill yourselves. I don't care. And so, like, you know, in 4 years, if they magically get power again and get the House and get the Senate and get a presidency, I can see them actually putting people like myself into a camp and saying, well, you deported people 4 years ago and it's the same thing, because they're saying it now. They're saying it's the same thing now. So, and this is actually how that propaganda worked out over the 13 years before it became illegal for Jews to leave Germany, right? They were talking about how separating them, making them wear stars, putting them in a ghetto, all of these things were steps of propaganda to eradicate and dehumanize. It's called othering. And it's actually just like the fundamental reaction humans have to the in-group, out-group psychological paradigm. I'm in the in-group, you don't belong. And the worst case scenario about that is I'm in the in-group and you need to die, right? And so that's where we're at as a country. We're there as a country. Like somebody said, we're going down that path. We've been down that path. I don't even know what anybody's talking about. That's been happening to me since 2012, but definitely in 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, and today, leftists are just enthralled with eradicating their fellow American. And while some of them may not say it out loud just so blatantly, they're skirting around the bush constantly. And that's where the idea of Nazism comes into play here. It is the radical othering of another person. And that's the idea, the subconscious, what we associate with Nazism, whether it is you being the Nazi, me being the Nazi, or them being the Nazi. But really what we need to stop doing is othering people to the point where we actually want to kill them. It's not necessary. Should probably just go our own ways. It's not going to work out. That's part of why I want to avoid the government, so that people don't have to deal with these people being in power illegitimately. It's just not necessary. And we don't need to be having these arguments. I get old and gray hairs because of them, you know?
It's a cold civil war.
Yes, it is. It's very cold. It's cold, man. It's shivery. It's bitter cold, you know?
I mean, it's the same thing as, you know, communists versus Nazis during World War II. That was a cold civil war as well.
Absolutely. Yes, it was. Yeah, it was just incremental dehumanization. Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't fit in with this society. Can you just go into this walled area right here? Don't pay attention to the soldiers on the corner or the moldy bread that we're feeding you. Shh, quiet. You know, and I know, you know, I'm like 0.01% of 1%. A lot of anarchists want to have control over other anarchists. I'm just kind of like, hey, you guys, I just want to let you know that there's a better way, and maybe one day we could actually work together to make that happen. If not, that's totally cool. I'm just going to go home and make some hot cocoa and crochet, you know?
That's why it's a good idea to have insurance in the second citizenship.
Actually, And that's what I'm gonna ask right there. What is your take on utilizing a second citizenship, dual passport, what of the like, looking for different alternatives to diversify, move assets around, and even move your person as a.
I've never imagined dual citizenship for myself. I've always imagined building an island of my own with other like-minded individuals, perhaps on a deeply discounted, abandoned gas and oil pipeline somewhere out in the Pacific. That's kind of been my fantasy, just like my own little black flag ship out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, no, I can't imagine that I wouldn't be against it.
Island.
Yeah, no, and whatever anybody feels like they need to do for their own self-preservation, I'm all for it. So I was on the no-fly list for like 3 years, so like getting a passport was kind of not practical for me. But I've been forgiven, you guys, and so I'm trying to get a passport. We'll see about my success.
It worked. It worked for Roger there. I know you guys are probably familiar with Roger from Bitcoin.com, and he was the victim of lawfare. He was talking about the Waco. Yeah, okay, you've got his book, Andrew. He was talking about the Waco massacre, though, and there were ATF criminals in the audience who heard this. So they didn't like what he had to say. So he was selling fireworks over eBay, and they charged him with moving explosives through the mail because it was like a vindictive case against him. He was the only person ever prosecuted in America under those charges. And they put him in federal prison. And Roger is not the federal prison kind of guy. He's like a very upright business. He's not cut out for prisons. So when he got out, he had the choice where he can keep being the victim of this lawfare, or he could renounce his citizenship and move out of the country. And he did. And that protected him for 10 years. But now the government has come back at him because he wrote that book Andrew just showed, which exposes their role in hijacking cryptocurrency. And a week after that book was released, they charged him with not paying a sufficient amount of exit taxes when he did renounce his citizenship in 2014. And for that crime, they want to give him 109 years. Now, no one in their right mind, by the way, Roger's rich. He's ready, willing, and able to pay whatever number they're demanding, but they won't even tell him what they want because the point is not to get money from him. The point is to silence him. And that's why they would give someone 109 years for a tax, quote unquote, crime. So if renouncing your citizenship is the only way to avoid the parasites in the government, then I say go for it, do it, get around the world, move to Thailand or Burma or Kenya, wherever you got to go, protect yourself.
I would prefer to go to. Well, I did want to go to Georgia, not the state, the country. They're really coming up in the e-commerce department, especially. Entrepreneurship is like running rapid. The tech industry is moving through, but now with the whole thing with Russia, I kind of don't want to go to Georgia anymore. So.
Yeah, right.
Be flexible, right? You have more than one place to go to.
But yeah, there's a number of different places, like and you don't necessarily have to get a dual passport or citizenship type deal. You can go to, like, Malta has a residency program where you go to Malta and you spend, like, I think, like, as long as you live there for like 6 months, you pay a donation. You don't have to pay any taxes. You end up getting, besides the lump sum, and then you get, obviously it's euro, so you get all of European travel. So you can, after 6 months, you can travel everywhere. And then they have like a visa program for like the rest of the world. That's pretty fair in comparison to the United States. So,
yeah, there's a lot of places you can go. I spent time in Southeast Asia. I really liked it. I have buddies who do that in Ecuador. They're doing like agorism that took them down there, and the living is cheap. It's not the cost of living has been wildly inflated by banksters, so you can still afford a decent quality life on a normal salary in a lot of these places, and you don't have to worry about the federal government coming down on you. A lot of people think it's the third world and America is the best country ever. I encourage them to travel as much as possible, and they'll find that a lot of that is just federal government propaganda from the parasites in DC. So I've got friends who do it in Thailand and Indonesia, friends in Bali, and all over the world. I sort of wound up in Florida for the same reason because, during the scamdemic, I thought to myself, well, I can't stay in New York and New Jersey. I have to get the hell out. And I was going to go to Bali or Thailand just to do like the digital nomad thing. But the COVID regulations were even worse out there. So I thought to myself, well, where can I go that still has beaches, nice weather, low taxes, and I can bring all my guns? And sort of by process of elimination, I wound up here in Florida.
Costa Rica.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know if the gun laws are over there though.
Oh, if you have the right amount of money, you can pay. You can pay off their government.
Shoot, that's
Central America is a lovely place.
Yeah.
Do you have any ambition to try to go other places now, Sal, that the scandemic's over?
I'm getting a little bit older now. The whole concept of traveling around is a little bit less appealing. At least I don't I love to travel, but I was going to do it on a permanent basis and just go from one country to the next and just go all around the world just perpetually. But I'm fortunate enough to have built this passive income streams, which allow me a sort of this location independence. I can kind of be where I want, which is nice, but I don't know. It's sort of, we'll see what happens. I've got a lot of guns now that I don't want to have to sell and give up. And if I move to Mexico or something, I don't want to wind up in a Mexican prison or have a shootout with the federales or something like that. You know what I mean? So I kind of have to there's more to consider nowadays,
I understand that.
Yep. Nope. I'll be traveling. Probably to Japan. Of course.
Nice.
It's not because of me. It is because I have a very precocious and curious 8-year-old daughter. So she wants to travel. What am I supposed to say? No, you cannot learn about the world. That would be ridiculous of me. So we homeschool, and I just don't see why not for a couple of years here that we could travel. So yeah, the hope is to actually be able to travel. I would like to go to some sort of island. That sounds really remarkable to me with my usual 9.5 feet of snow in the winter. So I literally fantasize about it on a regular basis. Tried to move down to Florida, but my family basically screamed bloody murder at me for 6 months straight, and that was that. They do want me to so I don't have any family near me. I kind of just did whatever I wanted. I have a rare kidney disorder, so it kind of changes my perspective on life a little bit. You only live once kind of situation. So I ended up doing all of the things that I wanted to do with my life when I got diagnosed at the age of 29, after I had spent 10 years trying to get diagnosed. So I've basically done everything that I wanted to do in my life. I'm pretty happy with the outcome right now. I've got a pretty good writing career here going on. I got Black Flag News that you all can check out, blackflagnews.com. I enjoy my modest little cabin life here with my chickens and my ducks and bees and cooking and crocheting and jarring and, impressing people in town with my excellent cooking skills is basically what I do with my time. And so, I just don't see a reason why traveling can't happen. Hopefully before I get too old and don't want to do it anymore and just want to settle somewhere like super nice and warm all the time and not have to wear 40-pound sweaters in order to maintain body heat. So that's my plan for the future. The last time I talked to you guys, I was working on my second book. And then I got bit by a brown recluse or some sort of crazy venomous spider, and it caused some kidney issues. So I've just been dealing with that. But I am back on the writing block. I've also been remodeling my house, me personally. So like the lifting it's really extreme. I just finished my $60,000 bathroom that I did for like $4,000 because I'm a cheap ass. And I just did all the work myself. So the drywall and the tiling and all of the heavy labor. And I'm about 80% done with remodeling my house that was woefully neglected for the past 30 years. And we'll see what happens after that. I really want to rent it out to somebody who's just as crazy as I am and understands the living situation and can actually make it up the side of a mountain in 4-wheel drive for the snow for like that we have 9 months out of the year. So it should be fun. It's all about taking advantage and making every moment count. So that's what I'm going to do.
Smart moves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that since you said you kind of want to rent it, is you could probably use like Airbnb, and since you're up there high in the middle of nowhere on the mountains, I mean, snow, skiing, you could probably.
I live in a town that's a tourist town. Pagosa Springs is it's the world's deepest hot spring. It's got Chimney Rock National Monument here. It's got Wolf Creek Ski Area about a half hour away. So, 4th of July weekend, they said that we got 60,000 visitors in the 3-day weekend last year. Again, the town is the size of 14,000 people. So it's crazy. The county loves getting their dirty little fingers into that. I haven't decided if I wanted to do a battle royale with the county. You see, they have a little disclaimer at the top of their land use regulations that regulate Airbnbs. It says that one single designated person gets to interpret and enforce these laws. Well, the thing about that is it makes it arbitrary and void. And since they put it at the top of the land use regulations, it means all the land use regulations are arbitrary and void. And I'm not really sure if I want to do that battle yet. So I'm not sure if Airbnb is in the cards for me. Definitely down and looking at days for rent. Well, that's just weird.
Technical difficulties.
It's in it for me.
Yes.
I think it's that is weird.
I don't know. It's been in the cards trying to figure that out, but we have a workforce housing issue here. People who are grossly underpaid for the area median income, like they're making like $30,000 and rent is like $3,000 a month. So they've got, excessive amounts of roommates and things like that. It'd actually be nice to help out a family that I know, and see if I can get them into an actual house instead of living out in like a camper in the middle of the woods during winter like this. I mean, it was like -20 here like 10 days ago. So knowing that people are living like that, that's a big concern of mine. A lot of those people are really good people, and I want to see them be able to succeed. At the very least, maybe get them into a house so that they can move on with their lives from here. A lot of the workers have moved away from here over the last several years as they try to gentrify a largely ranching middle-class community for the enrichment of government officials and their lovely friends. So,
and that seems like
punishing success.
Yeah, punishing success. Yeah, then that brings on to another one. Going to that gentrification. I mean, what do you two both feel is the reason for gentrification, and why it's such a necessity for government regulators, and our corporate masters.
I will speak about this ad nauseum, but try to keep it short. Government is wholly responsible for the marketable value of your home. They determine what the value of your house is. They do that through an appraisal, and then they determine the amount of taxes that you owe for that house based off of what they believe your house is worth. They don't necessarily base this off of market value. Market value is not necessarily what it should be based off of because markets fluctuate. So there is some issue with that. But basically, governments have granted themselves the authority under general welfare and policing powers to ensure prosperity for people. That's what they call it. Okay. In which they get to regulate homes for the safety of the community. Those homes, they're not allowed to have trash all the way up to, it has to be a certain color. You can't have a certain size sign in front of it. Like the list goes on. And all of this is for, of course, oh my gosh, so scary. Won't somebody please think about the public safety? It's just so very important to them. And so they create all of these rules and regulations where, like, you have to install an $80,000 septic tank. And it has to be approved by the inspector. And then the inspector needs to come out and watch you build your foundation. So, like, one of the things that I do, I'm a strategic consultant now. That's what I do. And some people actually hire me to navigate through the building permit process out here because it is so convoluted and so ridiculous. And some people have literally cried in my presence because of the amount of money and the arbitrary administration of these rules. And basically, they're using land use regulations to keep the unwanted out of the community. And so by doing that, that brings in very, very rich people who can pay in cash for these homes instead of the working class that has to take out a mortgage. And so they buy these homes in cash and they follow the land use regulations and they're allowed to be here, and they continue to snuff out people who they just don't want here through the land use regulations, either through like arbitrary enforcement. Oh, did I say that your RV pad could be 20 by 12? No. Even though you have the same RV as your neighbor and I told them 20 by 12, and I know I told you 20 by 12 first, it actually needs to be 20 by 36. And I'm not going to approve this for you as the inspector until you get this done. And so I've heard here in town, some people have been in the building process with the county for 12 years, 17 years. Yeah. And they just bury them. And like I said, I don't, here in particular in this county, they're not legal. It's arbitrary enforcement, overly worded. The language is so broad that one person has to interpret it in order to enforce it. And that makes it illegal and void on its face. And Americans don't know their rights anymore. They have no idea. And so they're not fighting for them anymore. They get told something that is completely different than what is actually happening by their government officials. For example, I went through like a recall process for a local official here. She's a real estate agent. She sat down with her boss in the county, and she's a commissioner, and she sat down with her boss sitting right across from her across the table and tried to buy a $5 million land parcel from her, enriching her boss some $500,000 with the commission. And so this is just shit that's happening left and right in front of us. And she goes and tells people that she's allowed to do it. I'm allowed to do it because I'm an independent 1099 contractor, and I think that I work for myself. Now, none of the laws regarding real estate agents state such a thing. She doesn't work for herself. She works for a real estate company that employs her. She knows this. The law makes it very clear, but yet she's going around telling people something different. And because they want to believe her, because she is their friend, they believe that she's their friend, they want to believe her. So it's become this thing where like literally you're watching what's happening right before your eyes and they're still lying to you. And they've got months They've got months and months and months to just drag it out so that eventually there's no consequence. That's essentially what's happening here. And, you know, I see it happening all across the country. It's very exacerbated here because we are isolated. Like, you literally cannot get to this town without passing a mountain pass. So it's really, really hard to get here. And because they're so isolated, I know people who have tried to get the FBI involved here. Like, nobody will touch it with a 10-foot pole because basically they're in on it. Everybody's getting enriched by allowing
used car salesman gimmick.
Well, think about it for a second, right? And this was really eye-opening to me this summer. You've got a commissioner who wants to enrich her boss. Her boss wants to have her purchase a development so she can build a new county administration building. That building's going to cost $15 million to build. But it is also an anchor tenant for another 50-unit, 400,000 plus housing development for people who make $85,000 to $125,000 a year. Okay, this was their plan. All right. And when I personally ruined that and made sure it didn't happen by telling everybody that she was an agent and she can't do that. And so they got really upset. But we're talking, like, the whole town got really upset. And they were like, so what if she's an agent? She's doing a great job. Because if they were to purchase this development, you've got roads and bridges that need to be made. You've got asphalt guys, pavement striping guys. You've got electric that needs to be put in. You've got plumbing that needs to be put in, water that needs to be put in. You've got all of this infrastructure that needs to be put in place before the electrical guy can come in, the construction guy can come in. You know, you've got drywall and framing and like the whole list goes on. But then it also enriches the fire department. It enriches the police department. It enriches real estate agents. It enriches the masseuse who's actually going to massage the people who are buying the houses in the development that is only contingent on the anchor tenant of the $5 to $15 million administration building that they're going to build. Like, it's really incredible. Like, even just, you know, rock yards and cement guys and like everything from top down benefits from the government enriching their friends. But if you're not one of their friends, you know, and then you might have a problem with it, but they don't care. And that the majority, 70% of the people in this town, for example, love the idea of enriching themselves off of the taxpayer dime. They believe it brings the community together. They chastise me. You are breaking apart this community by telling us our commissioner is working illegally. They got seriously angry about it. They chastised me about it just like that. It was pretty incredible. And I'm just like, well, I'm sorry. I think that if the government is going to work illegally, then I should have the choice about whether I pay taxes or not towards it. Like, I shouldn't have to associate with a bunch of criminals just because I pay taxes. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I kind of want to disassociate from that. I'd like to support a different criminal. Okay. I'm going to support Sal and his printed guns. I like that idea much better than a 50 housing development. You know, I should choose the criminals that I'm allowed to associate with. Damn it. Sorry.
You know, I saw the same pattern though, like of gentrification in New York City, where it was just the pattern was very simple. They would make the property taxes exorbitant, and the idea was because, you know, in order to pay the property taxes, the landowner has to charge $1 million for rent, and the average middle class person can't afford this, so they have to leave. That's why there is no middle class in Manhattan. You're either homeless, living on the street, or you're super, super wealthy, and more, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's like a foreigner who's come in and bought up the penthouse properties or something like that. And, you know, even like the old brownstones where, you know, it used to be like families in like the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's all, you know, very wealthy people, you know, young professionals, but that's basically it. And of course, that property tax revenue is going right into their pockets. It's being used to fund projects that are getting them reelected. Pork barreling is what we call it. And yeah, the whole thing is a scam. It's awful, and we've lost most of our cities to the political class. So, you know, I don't really see an end to it anytime soon. I think the only solution is people are going to have to engage the black and gray markets even more to make more money and engage in entrepreneurship so they can survive and navigate these, this nonsense.
Do you think the political class operates off of a playbook or a Bible? And they just work on.
What's that?
I said, do you think the political class operates off of a playbook or a Bible framework where they just pass around and everybody just follows the same regulations? And because it's so dispersed, it's a lot harder for people to see unless they actually go looking for it.
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's like a manuscript that they're all reading from, or if it's just that they found what works and, they do the same thing in LA as they do in New York, or if it's just the way the chips fell. But yeah, it seems to be a universal pattern. They're doing this all over the world at this point. I was just reading something where it was like, here in Florida, you need the average person needs like 3 jobs to afford the average like 1-bedroom apartment rent now. Which is, that's not reasonable to think that someone can work 3 jobs and, still have a life. So they have literally turned these people into slaves. That's why I tell people wage slavery is a real thing. So they've actually become slaves, literal slaves at this point. You're actually working to fund the politicians. You're literally working to keep them in office, which is slavery. So the only thing I can tell you is, it'd be illegal for me to tell you not to pay your taxes, but I would tell you to minimize your tax burden as much as possible and to use cryptocurrency and precious metals so that you're not funding the inflation and you can sort of protect yourself and hedge your bets from all that and to become your own bank and become your own boss and just to remove yourself from the system as much as possible. It's not really impossible to remove yourself 100%, but if you can get to like 60, 70, 80% free, you're doing better than most people in this country are.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be a little different on that one. I'm gonna say, take my legal advice, everybody. Tax evade. Just tax evade.
That's our Zach.
I don't care how you do it. If you can find somewhere that you can launder your money, do it. The mafia did it for 80 years, 100 years.
Just like that, we're taking off of YouTube.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And we got
That's
canceled
great.
again, Andrew. At least we didn't get canceled because of views.
All right.
Oh, my bad.
But listen, guys, I do have to get moving soon, though. I'm supposed to be somewhere at 9. I'm going to be late, but it is what it is. I hope you don't mind if I cut out on y'all.
No, I think it's a pretty good place to cut it.
I think.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I don't
we're
have
almost.
light, so I was just,
Me neither.
took 40
What
minutes
is a
to
light?
go into town, so I'm good.
Well, we appreciate
But,
y'all joining us and everybody
yeah.
watching.
Yeah,
no,
it was nice to meet you, Sal.
Mm-hmm.
It was good to meet you as well. My internet was very laggy tonight, so I got about 70% of what everybody said, but the other 30 kind of got lost in the ether.
That makes sense, actually.
Stay disrupting the stream as usual.
Right.
It is. It's. I knew that was probably going to be the issue. I mean, Sal comes on, we were probably going to get the CIA, NSA.
They think
Usually goes that way.
wonderful. They think I'm
Only
harmless.
reason.
It's wonderful.
So, only reason I say that is because they're attacking his show every Wednesday. So,
We get pulled down quite frequently.
I quit my show. I stopped doing a show years ago. I used to be Literacy to Liberty. Yeah, no, it wasn't worth the fight or the battle, so I just stopped. So
You got to pick them.
yeah, no, my writing seems to do a little bit better. I reach several thousand people with my writing, but when I try and do a show, yeah. Plus I'm kind of boring. I'm like, hey, you guys, read this book with me.
if people don't want to read anymore, they want their Tic Tacs.
Yeah, I know. Everybody keeps telling me, go on to TikTok. I'm like, again, 1842 people, remember who you're talking to.
So,
Well, do you guys want to?
I thought it got banned.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Your last intros and your plugs and everything to know about you.
Sal, you want to go first? I'll think about it.
SalTheAgorist.com. You can find all the info for me, what I've been up to. I'm on all your social media sites at Sally Mayweather or Sal.the Agorist. We stream every Wednesday on X live, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A show called The Subversive Spectrum. Check out my books, Antipolitics, The American Experiment, and 3 Books That Changed the World is the most recent one. AgoraThreads.com for libertarian merchandise and apparel, and 3dprintergobird.com, which we're renovating the site right now. But yeah, you can get 3D printers and 3D printing supplies in exchange for cryptocurrencies. The only place you can get 3D printers without having to access a KYC payment platform. And other than that, just stay tuned. We have a lot of things coming up this year, exciting stuff. And I think that's basically it.
All right. And Rachel Sunshine on Facebook, the Rachel Sunshine, as a matter of fact, blackflagnews.com. I'm on other social media as like official Black Flag News or Black Flag News, but I don't get on very often. You can find my book, How Medical Tyranny Murdered the United States Constitution, for free on my Facebook page. Had a lovely donor actually pay for that to be free and available for everybody. It is pertinent. You can find most of my legal arguments on Pagosa Daily Post, my local news source, and you guys enjoy all of that. Been a constitutional scholar for some 22 years. Have coined the term void the Constitution. So I believe in voiding the Constitution under a 28th Amendment nullification clause. So we should all get on that. Join me with that, Rachel Sunshine. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris was wrong about the 28th Amendment equal opportunity clause.
They sure are,
that was...
actually. Yes, they sure are. It's
never.
So here's the thing that the media keeps doing, and I notice, and there actually is a guy named Urban Odyssey. He's like a 21-year-old kid. He spent a lot of time documenting the changes in the internet. He's got like over 1 million PDFs available for people in a library. You should go see him. Urban Official. He is really awesome, and he basically showed everybody that it's not even true. The internet, Google, Wikipedia, the media, and the government are all working cohesively to tell you that things don't exist because they're like in a dictum or a preface to a ruling, when in fact it is actually like the heart and meat of the ruling. So there is no 28th Amendment. It's not like in a preface of an amendment. It's in the joint resolution for the bill. It directly, specifically says that it expired in like 1983 or some crazy nonsense like that. So for him to just come out and declare it, it's never going to happen. So again, 28th Amendment, that needs to be a nullification clause. That's what it should legitimately be. No expiration. We don't even need to work with those mamma jammas. We could just have a special convention ourselves. Maybe we all should meet. We can have a poker tournament. It'll be fun.
Nice. I'm down for a poker tournament. So, but with that, Andrew, anything else to say before we carry on out?
No, thanks for watching, guys. A really good episode. Thank you again.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. On. That's Sal the Agorist. That's Rachel Sunshine. I am the legacy of Jenny and Kaiser. That's Andrew Joseph. And live long and prosper, everybody. Peace.
See you guys.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pete Okerlund. I'd like to welcome you to WCW Nitro.
You know, brother, you think you know what it takes to beat Hollywood Hogan once Try out the largest arms in the world. You want to wrestle an inch more Ric Flair, you gotta be able to walk that out and style and profile. Woo!
You really think you're ready for a spin?
You really think you're ready for the Scorpion Deathlock? You think you're ready for a fatal encounter?
This is why they call me the total package. Do you have a pain threshold to withstand the butcher rack? Let's find out.
Hallo, hier ist Alex Wright. Wenn ihr High-Flying Wrestling Action wollt, Spinning Sidekick, Top Turnbuckle Dropkick, dann nehmt mich. Der Sieg ist euch sicher. Versprecht euch.
Oh yeah! Watch the flying elbow drop off the top rope. Not only beat people 1, 2, 3, but I hurt him real bad.
It only takes one of 1,000 holds. I think you're man enough for the challenge.
You better be ready to wrestle, because you know, when you're getting in the ring with Eddie Guerrero, it's going to be high-flying and exciting.
Hey, anytime you feel froggy, man, I'll slap on the buzz killer, rip your shoulder right out of socket. Wolfpack style!
Hey, funky boy. Like there's a choice here? Good God! Pick the man with a plan. Pick DDP.
Hey, all you suckers out there, you wanna play the game? You wanna play with the big boy? Put your feet on the button, cause when you go down 110th Street, it's gonna be on like neck bone, sucker. This is Booker T from Harlem Heat, hardcore OG brother from 110th Street. The minute you punks got the guts to step up to the plate, push the button.
Yo, Chico, you selected Scott Hall? Get ready for a wild ride on the outside.
Hey there! How'd you like to get power pop? Come on, pick me. I'm begging you, pick me. You think you got the courage to step in the ring? I think you're gonna wind up with a snap neck from the choke slam.
Technical wrestler, high flyer, brawler. It don't matter what you consider yourself to be. When you're in the ring with the crippler, you're a loser.